Hey, everyone. Welcome back to Wisdom and Woo. As you can see, I have another awesome guest with me. I'm very excited. We're all going to get to meet Zenobia together today. We talked a little bit. She's super cool. But we're going to be talking about the new moon in Taurus that will be happening tomorrow when you see this. And yeah, she's going to tell us a little bit about how she feels about this Taurus energy as a Taurus. We'll get into setting some intentions and we'll talk a little bit about the eclipse too, because that's happening. But let me just welcome you. I'm going to go back and forth calling you Z and Zenobia,
Love it.
so people know that it's you. But thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really glad we were able to make this happen.
Yeah, it's fun. I love meeting new folks. So
Yeah, meet
especially
new folks.
some folks.
Yes, I love
So
talking
okay.
Taurus and woo as well. Always.
Yes, I mean, right. And and I also say for everyone watching that I didn't see like her bio information beforehand, but I'm like, oh my gosh, she's so Taurus. I love it. So
Yeah, it's
you'll
very
hear
classic, almost stereotypical Taurus. Like
it. Right.
I lean into it. I embrace it.
Yeah, no, I mean you got to. That's awesome. All right, so let me give the full bio. Zenobia Taylor, otherwise known as Z, which we'll talk off camera about that connection that we have there too. But yeah, so she titles herself as pleasure enthusiast. So Taurus. So she is a Seattle-based barista and a self-titled pleasure enthusiast. During their time working at a feminist sex toy shop, Z found her passion for learning how we experience pleasure, what keeps us from accessing it, and how we can have more of it in our lives. I mean, who doesn't want that? She believes that our ability to give and receive pleasure, both within and beyond the bedroom, generates more love in a world in desperate, very desperate, I'll highlight that, need of it. In their spare time, Z enjoys cuddling with with their pets, laughing with her sister, and having picnics with her friends. So that is a very exciting bio.
Thanks.
I appreciate talking about, it's so difficult sometimes for people to talk about pleasure and connecting to pleasure. I don't know how that became so taboo, but especially, for anyone who has or does identify as female, the stigma that comes with enjoying sex
hmm
or connecting to pleasure is just, I mean, it's difficult to overcome. So I so appreciate you just being like, yes, this
Yeah,
is my mission.
it really is. It truly feels like my calling. For a long time growing up, I wanted to be an actor, which I love and still love. I love performing. I love getting to create works of art with other people. I love collaborating. Um, but once I finally got like an opportunity, I'd been working toward it my whole life. I got there, and then it wasn't it it didn't sit right within me. It felt
Mm,
like it disturbed my spirit, the way that it was manifesting for me.
okay.
Um, to basically to make my art into a professional endeavor, and that was really rough. And so I ended up stepping away from that. And for the first time in my life, I was like, I don't know what I want to do. I feel lost. And I happened
Mm,
to be working at this sex toy shop that is very much based around sex education, undoing a lot of sexual stigmas, was founded by like a couple of lesbian women and was geared toward queers, was an all queer staff,
nice.
and was created to make a space for people who felt intimidated in most other sex toy spaces, where they felt like, especially like women or women identified people,
Hmm.
it can be really intimidating to come in and feel like the people are leering at you. You don't feel comfortable asking questions of the people. And also, the sex toy industry is totally unregulated, so there are so many things on the market that can and will hurt you, especially if you're
Yeah.
using it internally. And so this shop was all about giving out information, making it accessible, making it, and I really enjoyed making it fun for people, making it
Yeah.
something that people wanted to talk about. And these discussions I would have with people who, they would bring up stuff that they had never said out loud in 20, 40, 50 years of living, that they had never wondered about to someone else.
Yeah.
And I just happened to be here and happen to be the person who gets to receive this, and who I would like to believe more often than not got to send people away feeling more empowered within themselves. And each of those experiences was so priceless. And I was like, I want this forever. I just want to talk
Yeah.
to people about
I
how they
love
feel
that.
good and what keeps them from feeling good all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. Yeah, I it's funny, there are many women that I know that I was the one to take them to, buy their first sex toy,
Mm-hmm.
and, I mean, I am not a Taurus, I'm very much a Cancer, I have many planets in Cancer, so definitely that emotional core of what people need,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, it can be very intimidating for anyone really. I mean,
Yeah.
if you've never been in a sex shop before,
And so many of us
or
don't even talk about sex
oh
generally.
gosh,
So, or
right.
the information we get is very twisted and shame
Yeah.
ridden.
Yeah.
So, I don't think there's one person on this earth who doesn't carry some sense of shame around some aspect of their sexuality. Um,
Absolutely.
and yeah, I think it's really important work to help undo it.
Yeah. Yeah, I love
Mm-hmm.
it. Yeah, and, you'll have to tell me if that shop is still around, so
Oh,
we
definitely.
can
Yeah.
we can refer people there to have a good experience because
For
we need
sure.
that. So yeah, so this leads me into Taurus's energy, which again I'm going to talk about a little bit, and you kind of tell me how this settles with you. But part of that Taurus energy, so for anyone who watched the new moon in Aries, right? We moved into the new astrological year. Aries is about the self, learning about ourselves, and this next step is Taurus. And so Taurus is about, we're still in this mode of like learning about us. And Taurus is very much, as an earth sign, it's very much about grounding ourselves, about slowing down, about, I want to say kind of rooting yourself, right? Finding the things that you really enjoy beyond just, oh, yeah, I like this television show, like deeply connecting to things that give you pleasure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether sexual or otherwise. Um, but being really intentional about creating spaces and physical places in your life that feel really good to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
That feel like home is a big focus for Taurus energy, creating a home and an atmosphere that feels, it may not feel like it to anybody else, but as long as it feels that way to you, it's really important that like you come home to a space that makes you feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that also is an internal thing. I mean, it manifests very often in the physical world of physically things around you need to be a certain way, but even internally, this idea of kind of always being on the hunt for or wanting to learn more about yourself, and I want to say like a sense of security, right?
Mm-hmm.
Finding that security within is usually a big component. And then even moving into both sexuality and sensuality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, um, I mean, there's a distinction between the two functions, but if we're thinking about, again, Aries, we learned about ourselves, Taurus, now we're starting to explore that more deeply. And it's not just the surface level, like, oh, here I am. How do I walk around? It's what feels really good to me. And being really open to exploring that, to your point, more so than before people have the chance to kind of ruin it for you, right? Before people start putting like shame or no, you can't do this, onto the expectations. Taurus energy really comes across more like, I'm not even trying to think about that stuff right now. I need to
Mm-hmm.
I need to find my own safety, my own security, my own comfort zone is
Mhm.
going to be first and foremost. So
Yeah.
how does that sit with you?
I would say that I am very much somebody who I want to be able to rely on things. Like I want things to be able to be stable. I think especially like as a Taurus who in my personal life, especially my childhood, didn't I had stability in many ways, and there were many ways in which nothing was ever predictable.
Hmm.
And I think even through a lot of young adulthood, I'm still in my young adulthood, like, but
I
um,
like to believe I am too.
exactly. But fresh out of high
That's
school,
right.
figuring stuff out. It was
Yeah.
a lot of instability, and I found that since being able to, for the first time in my adult life, and kind of just generally in my life as a whole, I've been able to create a home that I can rely on and that I am
Yeah.
happy to come back to and that restores me and that replenishes me. And once that happened, I was able to unlock so much, so much within
Yeah.
myself that I just didn't have access to while things were unstable. Like that's how core that sense of home was to me.
Yeah.
I hadn't fully unpacked my boxes ever in like 4 years because I was
Oh,
always like, I'm going
wow.
to be moving again, or it's not
Okay.
even worth like decorating here. And so
Hmm.
the sense of self that that gives me is really important. It also resonates in terms of how, I mean, even my workplaces, I like to make sure that I can be myself and that I can be transparent. I try to be very forward and upfront about a lot of things that I think some people are a little bit more cautious or tentative to reveal. Like you're gonna know that I'm queer. You're gonna know that I'm non-binary. You're gonna know that I talk about sex and I enjoy talking about sex. You're gonna know that I've dabbled in sex work. I just don't want any parts of my experience or my authenticity to be, I don't want to be in a space that would weaponize them against me. And so I
Right.
would rather like lay them out on the table and be like, can I make, is there a place for all of my stuff here, or do I need to go elsewhere? Because I will
Right.
happily go elsewhere if that cannot be accommodated. And I think that's something that I think shocks and appalls people sometimes. And of course there's boundaries, not telling everybody everything, but I there are parts of myself that are essential to my story,
Hmm.
and I don't intend to compromise them
I
for
love it.
anyone.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
it. And I'm so grateful that, at your age, right, at your young adulthood, that you've already figured that out, that you've already gotten to a place where you recognize it because for so many folks, I mean, people 2 or 3 times your age, it can really be difficult, to figure that out or to know, like, why do I feel so unsettled? Why do I not wanna unpack my boxes and settle
Mm,
into a place? Or, why do I not feel, um how am I not able to connect with people and share of myself?
right.
What's blocking me from that, from doing
Right.
that? And part of it is that willingness to be open and very honest about who you are and finding that self assuredness, that we have to learn. If you're not a Taurus, all of the signs are a part of who we are,
Hmm.
and there are lessons to be learned from each of us. I mean,
Absolutely.
like with Aries, we talked about how, people want to say, oh, Aries are very selfish. Well, Aries' lesson to the rest of us is you have to start with being selfish. Like you
Hmm.
have to know who you are first
Yeah.
in order to do anything else. And, making that progression, Taurus's lesson to the rest of us is you have to slow down. You have to
Yeah.
figure out what feels good to you and what
Hmm.
doesn't, what home feels like to you
Yeah. And
before
I
you
think
move
that,
on.
yeah, I think that what's interesting when we're talking about like Aries and Taurus, as far as just like a cycle, if Aries is about identifying what feels good, and Taurus is about like the feeling and the experiencing, and like the practice of being able to trust your body's instincts and messages when they say this is good or this isn't,
Right.
and being able to prioritize those. I think
Mm.
I like to think of Tauruses as the hedonists of the zodiac,
Okay.
They just, I mean, I think the Taurus stereotype is like we get boiled down to like food, sex, and sleep. And I'm like, without food, sex, and sleep, none of us would be here. So I
Right.
mean,
I mean, but that's real though. I mean,
mhm,
again, it's, everything, all the work that I've done for many years, it ends up coming back to those cycles, right?
yeah,
And when we get stuck or we can't figure out how to do a thing, chances are we skip some steps, and I think astrology is a great tool to use in recognizing, like, if you didn't take the time to get to know who you are and to do things that are just for you, that's selfishness. If
mhm,
you've never done that, if you've never allowed that, how can you progress in the other steps, right? You're always going to have a little bit of deficit.
yeah,
And once we get to Taurus, if you haven't taken the time, I mean, I think sometimes the biggest jolt, I think, is moving from the action, action, action of self and Aries to the,
mm,
like, stop of Taurus,
mm,
right? That grounded, earthy energy just stops you from that first burst of energy of
mhm,
learning about yourself to say, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, slow down.
yeah,
What actually feels good? Take a minute
yeah.
to actually feel it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you say that because I think another one of the like stereotypes of Taurus is that they're lazy or prone to sloth,
Mm,
which I think is interesting because I think the reason it's phrased that way is because it's within this narrative of a capitalist, production oriented
yeah,
society
right,
that if you are just wanting to lay about all day and just take naps and
right,
masturbate, you're no good so and so.
right.
But at the same time, we're in this era where we're seeing so many like little tweets that are saying things like, I was made to sit with my tits out in a garden eating fruit, and now I have like a credit score and college debt. What is this? Like, I
Right,
think we're starting to move more towards a place of being like, man, this blows. There's got to be another way to do this. And I think
right.
that Tauruses are just a little bit more in touch with that. I don't think it necessarily vibes all the time with what the world wants from us and what the world
Sure.
asks from us and things that do need to happen and need to get done. But I think that it's interesting. It's interesting to look at it that maybe instead of like sloth or laziness, it's about how conditioned we are to go go go. That when
Mhm.
the moment of pause comes, it's terrifying. I think that's why so many of us had such a hard time with quarantine. I
Oh,
mean, being shut
absolutely.
off from people, having so many things in flux. There was a lot going on that gave all of us a very difficult time. But I
Yeah.
did notice that the people who were having the most difficult time were my friends who I knew were constantly running from themselves, were
Mhm.
constantly running from their thoughts and from like trying to find peace within themselves, constantly trying to find distractions like without themselves.
Right.
And I found that the people who were able to find some spaces of growth and of comfort a little bit more ease were people who were more accustomed to sitting with themselves and
Mhm.
to having time with themselves. And I think that, I think that Taurus season is a great time to just figure out how to hold your own hand and just watch the clouds roll by and
Yeah.
just take a deep fucking breath.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I love that because I was also thinking about, just seasonally when it happens, right? At least here in the northern hemisphere, it's spring, right? And
Mhm,
so spring, I mean, one of the things that I think about with Taurus, it's funny you mentioned like the potential for sloth peas. I actually think of them like of the negative part
mhm,
of people are like, oh, they're stubborn
mhm.
and things like that. And again, yes, and right, yes, they're stubborn about finding what they need, about slowing down and just
Mhm.
being and smelling the flowers and enjoying what's happening in the moment, right? They're stubborn about not being pushed
Yep.
when it's not time.
Mhm.
I don't need to be on your schedule to be
Mhm.
on time.
Yeah.
I think is is the way I think about kind of that negative stereotype that people have for Taurus. But it makes me think about spring in that, you know, spring comes in kind of rough, right? Spring comes
Mhm.
in like cold and rainy, but the evolution, right? It warms up, things start to bloom, things are growing, and you need that, right? You need that kind of brustly, like shaking things up a little bit, and then that slow down, like, oh, but look where it got us,
Mhm.
right? It got us right here. And I really appreciate that about Taurus energy. And again, just that kind of like earthy, beautiful, like just slow down,
Yeah.
just slow down. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. So I also want to mention the eclipse. So we're also having, at the same time as the new moon, we also have a solar eclipse happening. And, you know, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about eclipses and so on and so forth. I mean, partly because I'm not like a full-fledged astrologer, and I don't want anybody to think that I am. I'm absolutely not. I'm an avid studier of astrology, but the eclipses, you know, they intensify the energy that they are a part of. So, you know, if we think about all the things that you and I touched on today related to Taurus energy and all of the kind of qualities, good, bad, or otherwise, the solar eclipses are going to really shine a light on, right? Sun, shine a light on all of those areas, and for a much longer time than just the moon cycle that we're in, right? So
Mhm.
normally, you know, the moon cycle is you know, the 4 weeks. And you kind of feel that energy moving through like this Taurus energy for, you know, even beyond the full moon. I mean, you know, we hit a full moon in 2 weeks and it's in another sign, but you still feel that Taurus energy or whatever sign you're in. You feel it for like that full month, and it's a time for you to make those changes and adjustments that you need. But when there's an eclipse involved in that, the energy of that lasts much, much longer. I'm
Mm.
talking 3 months, 4 months, 6 months out.
Gotcha.
And so it's just important to think about that you
Mhm.
may not shake off this Taurus energy. If you're not a Taurus, you may feel kind of stuck
Mm.
focusing on these Taurus things for longer than you normally would. So again, if you think about focusing on what makes you feel safe and the physical space around you, right? Your focus may be on finding safety, finding worthiness, finding ways to make more money, to buy more things that feel good to you. You may really find a focus on that quite a bit more now because of this eclipse.
Mhm.
So I just want everyone to keep that in mind, that, you know, it's not like normally like, okay, we're going to move into Gemini season in a month and, you know, move on to thinking through things and talking. You might be stuck for a while, which isn't a bad thing,
Mhm.
right?
I
Take
love
the time. Yeah,
it.
take the time to really sit down and look at your finances, right? And how you're able to grow them in a way that feels, again, comfortable to you. You know, Z, when you were talking about the go, go, go and the folks who didn't do great in quarantine, they're going to be forced again, right?
Because it
To
happens.
yeah, to
Mm.
slow down and say, okay, I know you thought through these things and you're probably doing a bunch of things to prepare yourself, but the universe is like, no,
Mhm.
for real, you're not, we're not letting you move on from these things. And so allowing yourself to just say, okay, yes, let me get serious about not just making more money for the sake of making more money. I want to make more money because this is what I'm able to do with it. I'm
Mhm.
able to buy a house that's better for my family, or I'm able to have, maybe it is having more things, more big fluffy pillows that I love having on my bed, or whatever it is. It's okay. It's okay if you take the time to think about why you're moving forward when you start moving. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, that actually resonates very much with me because my birthday is this Friday. So I'm a
Whoop,
cuspy
whoop.
Taurus. Yeah, I'm
Mm-hmm.
April 22nd. and it's my 25th birthday. So
Woo-hoo.
yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. I am prone
Yeah.
to birthday blues
Happy
typically, but
birthday.
thank you. Yeah, these last couple of years, I feel like I've just been using it as recognizing it as what it is, which is a call to reflect and to
Yeah,
acknowledge, and instead of taking
absolutely.
that time to like beat myself up or run away from those reflections because I'm afraid of what they will bring up, like actually leaning into it and creating a lot of space and grace for myself
Yeah,
in the
that's
weeks
great.
leading up. And so, yeah, I've been working on making a list and thinking about like what I want to manifest in this next phase of my life. This
Yeah.
25 number feels like one of the first times in a while that I've like really felt this like age transition.
Yeah.
Um
25 is a good one. Yeah. To get you
yeah,
thinking about
yeah.
that. Yeah.
And yeah, just one realizing that I need to get specific with my
Hmm.
goals. One thing I've heard a lot in the manifestation podcasts and all that are get specific, write down
Hmm.
actual goals and imagine what they look like,
Right.
explain, describe what they look like, envision what they look like, and glue it into your head. So, yeah, I think that it is really interesting that you mentioned that right now it's about the specificity of why and how we are moving forward, because I think I've known that I've wanted things to shift for a while,
Hmm.
but yeah, leading up to this Taurus season, I've been like, I think I need to get really specific.
No, I
And
mean, yeah, and I love that you mentioned even the, like actually setting goals around it, and again, tapping into that Taurus energy of not just setting goals like I don't know, I've always hated those like what are your 1 year, 2 year, 5 year goals for life, but they're not always rooted in anything meaningful to the individual, right? So
mhm,
setting goals around, you know, again, what is true to you, not
mhm.
just a random financial goal, let's say, or
Right.
I want to save X amount of dollars by the time I hit 30, or,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, that's great. But if there's not a why behind it,
Mhm.
it's that much harder to get there. And
Yeah.
this really is the time for you, absolutely, and for all of us to really think about, tapping into that and saying, what's the distinction here, right? What have I been maybe pushing towards that has
Mhm.
felt resistant, and I don't
Yeah.
know why? Maybe it's because you haven't tapped into connecting it to really what's meaningful for you,
Mhm.
and that self-worth piece of it that is kind of easy to gloss over sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's where it comes back to not what is graphable and quantifiable, but what do you feel? Like
Yeah.
when I list out my goals, what I have right now is like there's so many different things. Like some of them are financial, some of them are career oriented, some of
Yeah.
them are related to my nutrition, are related to my personal life, are related to my personal rituals. Like I told my mom, I was like, I think I want it to be more of a bucket list,
Yeah.
not like a list of goals. Because if I set a list of goals that are like, I need to accomplish these by this date and this time, like my
Right.
big list, my feelings list. When if I try to
Yeah.
set my feelings list on a timeline, on a deadline, I know it's going to turn me off from it. So
Right.
instead, I'd rather it's like setting a list of intentions. But by making the list, that's therefore me being specific, spending time with myself to imagine it. And then once I
Right.
have the list, I'll see which goals are short-term accomplishables, long-term accomplishables, and then I can take the time to parse those apart and
Mhm.
make those ones into maybe more quantifiable goals. But then I
Mhm.
also have my list with things like pull a tarot card every day, like
Yeah.
yoga this many times, and not having to beat myself up about it if those things don't happen or I'm not perfect at them, but rather knowing that that's what I'm moving towards and
Right.
having it be externalized in black and white.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would just say too that when you're making that list for yourself and, when you got to the next step of like then we can then I can kind of divide it out and when things can happen now and late, you don't know, right? I
Hmm.
mean, I think we also get caught up in like the timeline of certain things, right? And I think a big message for Taurus is, like I said, it's about my timeline, right? Taurus says, this is when it feels good for me, I'm going to do this. You can't make me do it sooner or later, because if it's time now, I also have to do it right now. Right. That's the kind of flip side to that too. And so when you start thinking about, and again, I'm not suggesting like don't make goals with timelines on them, but when you're making this particular list, or as we, collectively here, even for the video, as we think about setting intentions for this new moon, right? New moon energy is about setting intentions because the new moon is the dark phase. We're building up to the full moon, right? So we set intentions at the new moon. So as we think about setting those intentions, and whether they're big goals because you're having a beautiful birthday, or just ready to move in our lives, thinking about, again, if your focus is on what I need for me, right? And really at the core, which again is going to take you to slow down. It's going to take for you to just be and not do. Right. So when you can stop and just be and start asking those questions about, what do I need to feel safe? What do I need to feel secure? How do I need to make enough money to pay bills and live in a place that, again, feels safe and secure to me and also feels comfortable? Right. How do I ensure that I have, some people maybe how do I know I have enough money in the bank that if something happens to me, maybe that's security for some people. All of those things are those types of things, feeling them down to your core, starting there. And again, they may be things that happen right away. You may have a thing on that list that feels like it's probably going to take me a couple years to get to that. But once you put it out into the universe and it's connected to your core, and now you're like, yes, I'm giving this more importance. I'm putting it here as a priority. The universe lines up for you. It's that whole, just ask kind of philosophy, and the universe hears you. And then allowing it, that's the benefit of the allowing, is that when you put things out into the universe, and I don't want to make it sound too, I know some people get carried away with the whole manifesting of like, I just have to sit here and ask for things and wait for it to happen. No, there's a little more involved there. But on a bigger scale, a spiritual scale, that is the process, right? There's a piece there that is not for you to do. You put out into the universe. You have to stop, Taurus energy. You have to stop and allow that to take root, and then be open to receiving it. If you're busy doing, how are you receiving anything?
Yeah, and worrying about the when and the how and the package it's going to come in and like what's the delivery date. You gotta. It's about, I think it's very much about connecting to it, having a faith that it is for you, and that it is coming to you, that you have made it for you, and also that it is already meant for you. That's where I think that universe and I dialogue comes in. And then just having faith in yourself and having faith in the universe, and that we are one and the same, and trusting that it will be delivered to you by the universe, and that also you will take the steps necessary to allow it to be delivered, to be able to receive it.
Right. Absolutely.
So it's definitely about a surrendering. And I think that's been a huge lesson in my life, especially over the last few years. I think that as a Taurus, one thing that has been a difficult lesson for me is surrendering, and learning how to breathe and to allow. But I think it was the Two of Pentacles. And I can't remember like all the specifics of that one, but I know that in my deck it explained it in a way that was about just rerouting and trusting that you can weather the storms that are coming for you. And there was a phrase they mentioned about how trees that are very stiff and immovable are the ones that break in big windstorms. And it's the ones that have deep root systems and are able to flex and sway with the oncoming winds that are able to remain standing and able to remain growing. And so that metaphor to me, with like that earthy metaphor, and learning that being able to have a little bit of give is what is going to allow me to remain intact has been
Mm-hmm.
very eye-opening. And I think that's one of the big pieces that I've been absorbing about manifestation is to
Yeah.
surrender.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. No, and yeah, and that's absolutely, yeah, that's absolutely what we have to. And it's hard. It's hard because we are naturally that way. I mean, but then society, as you mentioned, we live in this, especially here, in the States, it's all about moving, moving, moving. How much money can we make? Capitalism is the core of everything that we do, which
Mm-hmm.
means you have to keep going. You don't get to stop and slow down.
Right.
And inevitably it becomes overwhelming. It becomes too much. And you have to be able to be flexible, to recognize when it's time to go and when it's time to just slow down. So do you remember, do you know what deck you have? I'm just trying to
Yeah.
think of
Yeah,
which.
it's called the She-Wolf Tarot by Serpent Fire. Yeah.
I don't own it. I have seen it before. I always try to picture that card in my mind when people mention their tarot deck. So well, I actually just pulled a card for us, and you and I haven't ever pulled cards together before. So I like to just explain to people that when I show you the card, whether you know anything about it or not, um, don't try to analyze it, figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I wonder what this is. Um, this is also kind of how I teach. I don't officially teach, but how I teach people to read tarot and to get connected to tarot is don't rely on the book. We're not going to look at the book. Even if you've never picked up a deck before, there's a time and a place for the book, but
Mm-hmm.
I want you to look at the card. I'm going to put it up to the camera. I want you to just look at it and just tell me um, the first things that jump out at you, whether it's images, it's colors, a feeling, and try not to, again, go into your mind quickly starts wanting to like figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
But just go with whatever jumps out at you at this moment, because every time you look at cards, it's going to be something a little bit different. So I'm going to hold this up and I want you to just tell me what jumps out at you first, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it.
I'm loving this green skin. I'm loving the heart-shaped shield. This is a gorgeous dress and a really wildly powerful crown. Lots of
Hmm.
stars in there. Love the bull. Definitely the woman figures who I noticed first, but I'm now seeing this bull in the foreground with its beautiful collar and these 5 stars on its belly. It looks like it's at peace, but also ready to handle business if need be.
Yes. Yeah. And is there a feeling that
A feeling of like protection and protectedness
mm,
of readiness, and also yeah, a feeling of readiness, as well as a state of knowing.
yeah,
Yeah,
I love that.
definitely
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah.
Powerful. Mhm.
And what I love about this deck, and especially today, thinking of this Taurus energy, I love that this is the only deck I've ever seen where the Empress here is green,
I love that.
right? I mean,
Especially with
Taurus,
we
earthy
immediately
energy.
associate that with witches. I mean, that's what came to my
Well,
mind
yes, that
immediately,
too.
which I love. I
Yeah.
I I adore that, especially for the Empress. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, the Empress card, for, anyone watching, the Empress card is one of the major arcana cards, which is, again, like the big life lessons,
Mhm.
right? The other minor arcana are like the day-to-day mundane things and experiences that we go through, certainly
Mhm.
important, but
Mhm.
much more temporary, right? And so even having said that, thinking about this solar eclipse that's happening in Taurus and this more
Yeah.
permanent big life lesson, right?
Yeah.
So the Empress is in the journey, the fool's journey through the big life lessons. The Empress is the embodiment of feminine energy, right?
Mhm.
Feminine energy being receptive energy, right? So
Mhm.
it's the taking in, and the if you think about masculine energy and projecting, right, pushing out, getting people
Mhm.
to move and line up,
Mhm.
this receptive energy, like if you think about moms, right? So often the Empress shows in decks as pregnant, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it is about that creativity that can happen when you both figuratively and literally let things in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Letting things in allows you to then create, right? And get more, get bigger, expand. And everything that you think about feminine energy, right? I mean, it's, you might think of, some people may think of like softness, right? There is a softness to women, but the strength that
Mm-hmm.
comes from that softness,
Mm-hmm.
right? You know, the power that is behind that, that softness. That softness is there for a reason. It is there for comforting, but it's when we talked about even like that, being flexible, being malleable, women's bodies physically have to be able to stretch to,
Mm-hmm.
you know, grow a baby inside of it. And so appreciating and recognizing that things are not just one way or the other, right? That when your tree metaphor, being able to be flexible, but really focusing on what's important for comfort. When you think about, again, like moms and feminine energy, they're the ones who, you know, traditionally are responsible for making sure that the home, it has what you need for comfort, right? Whether it's being at work and paying, coming to pay the bills, or whether it's physically being in the space, ensuring that the children, the family are taken care of. The Empress energy is so much Taurus energy. You know, again, finding that comfort. I mean, the things that you see even in this card, you wouldn't always see together, right? I mean, they're such like hard and soft
Yeah.
together in this image, but it makes so much sense when you see it together.
Mm-hmm. I forget, is the Empress a Taurus card? Because I know that some of the cards have like signs attached to them.
Yeah. I actually, I want, it's funny that popped into my head. I think it actually is. I
I
don't
think it
always,
is.
I'm gonna, I mean, who am I? I want to say I don't always agree with the card that it's supposed to represent. But
Sure.
yes, when I pulled it out, I was like, wait, isn't this the Taurus card?
I think that's what
Because,
my deck puts the ones that they're supposed to be or whatever with
mhm.
them. And
Oh,
I find, yeah, sometimes they really resonate. And I do think that the Empress is a Taurus, and that would also explain why the bull is in there.
yeah.
Or yeah, so
Hmm.
I could be wrong, but I
No,
think it's
no,
funny
I
to have
absolutely
pulled
think
that
you're right.
one for the Taurus episode.
Yeah, no, I absolutely think you're right. And again, I mean, it makes sense. And even that stubbornness that we mentioned as like a
Mm-hmm.
quality, again, when you think about the necessity for feminine energy to be stubborn,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, if you think about our society and it's, you know, the patriarchy that has destroyed everything, there's
Mm-hmm.
a stubbornness that we have to have. Whether you identify male, female, or, you know, non-binary, there is a stubbornness to the way that we receive energy that we
Mm-hmm.
absolutely have to have at this time, right?
Yeah.
And so if we think about, you know, the message for this new moon in Taurus, I'd say it's that: be really stubborn and
Mm-hmm.
determined in connecting to that which gives you comfort, that which
Yeah.
brings you joy, which brings you safety and helps you to see that self-worth for yourself.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, to me, the Empress like also represents. Well, we're speaking about the feminine energy and how the Empress is a representative of that. And for me, when I think of feminine energy, especially like outside of a non-binary or outside of a binary context, I really appreciate the yin and yang philosophies around it. But when I think of feminine energy, I think of nurturing, of grounding, of the ability to receive, of the ability to attract, of the ability to soothe, of the ability to empower.
Yeah.
And I think that the Empress is yeah, the feminine energy counterpart of the emperor. And both of these people are leaders who are very assured in what their
Mhm.
power is. And they both have different types of power. And I feel like that empress power is about being very assured in the knowledge of intimacy and of being emotionally available and accessible to yourself and to those around you. And
Mhm.
while I think that within our patriarchal society, it can be seen as, yeah, being stubborn about how we're going to move, I think that when you're on your queen shit, as the empress is, baby, I'm not stubborn. I make the rules. And
That's
like
right.
how I move
Yeah,
is how shit moves.
that's right.
And there is no force or you will have to you will have to take this power from me
Yes. Yes.
with
You're not
some
late if
harmony.
I'm telling you that I ain't ready.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
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 So
No,
I
I love
think
it.
that yeah, the Empress is very much she doesn't even have to explain to herself or others how she do what she do.
Yeah, right.
It's not even in an act of defiance. It's just like
Mm-mm. Yeah.
in an act of yeah, sheer will.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I think like sheer magic, like
Yeah.
the the ability for, you know, the empress to literally create life and grow
Hmm.
within their body. If that ain't magic, magic
Yeah.
doesn't exist.
And to also remember that the Empress is in this card, like, we can imagine that she's a queen of a realm, and
Mhm.
so she's not only able to create life within her body, she's sustaining life outside of her body as
Yeah.
well, and not just like a child, but also the relationships that she has.
Community.
She has a clearly an animal companion there, so it goes beyond humans. There's lots of nature included.
Mhm.
She's willing to protect with her heart shield, so
Yeah.
her heart as well as a shield. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's funny the more we talk about this because I'm like, yes, this Empress is connected to Venus, which is the
Mhm.
ruler of
Is the
Taurus.
ruler of Taurus,
So
yeah.
yeah, so I think absolutely that we are on point um, with this card, and yeah, I mean all of those qualities. I mean I love the Empress card,
Mhm, it's a fun one,
and
yeah.
it's probably my second favorite card in the deck, but in most any deck.
Mhm.
But just that energy, just that
Yeah.
overwhelming like love for, again, community, feminine energy, when you think about receiving, also is about community
Mhm.
and communication, right? Being able to back and forth, grow this community and care for community, in a very different way than masculine energy is more focused on protecting that said community and leading it in
Yeah.
a particular direction and creating structure and boundaries, which is also completely necessary,
Mhm.
and so, yeah, I do. I love it, and, it's funny, I always say, like, "I couldn't have picked a better card."
I mean, honestly,
Which
I'm
I
very
did.
happy with this Empress card, yeah.
'Cause I didn't pick it, the universe picked it for
We
us,
picked
so,
it all together,
yeah.
yeah.
Yes, well, I have so, so, so enjoyed having you. I definitely hope that you make some time to come back through,
Oh, I would
and
love
maybe we'll stay
that.
in touch because I already have, like, a dozen things in my mind, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, we could totally do this thing together." So,
Oh, great.
I definitely love that you're here, that you've been here. I appreciate you. Is there anything you'd like to share with us before you go, or
I have had a great time. I'm really glad that everything worked out for us
Yes.
to be able to have this chat together. It felt
Yeah,
extremely timely in my life, just about
good.
some of the goals that I have, the conversations I'm wanting to have. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was great to bounce these ideas off someone else, to have an opportunity to receive some more information about what's going on. I just take
Yeah.
all my interactions as some sort of message from the universe. And so
Absolutely.
this feels like a very, very like timely, timely
Yeah.
message. So
Yeah,
I've really
absolutely.
enjoyed it, and I
Yeah.
appreciate having this connection with you.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I'm gonna just stop loving on you now. We're gonna stop. But
Hmm.
yes, it was perfect. I'm so glad that you could join me here. So, all right, everyone, that's it. Make sure that you join us for the next Wisdom and Woo, and stay magical, y'all.
Yay! Thank you. See ya.